Hi, I'm Stephanie Larkin. I am so delighted to be joined by author Kay Renz of Suddenly Sexual, stories about the first time again. So this is not just, you're getting married for the first time or that first boyfriend. We're talking a little later in life, maybe when there's a little more water under the bridge and some of the things that come up with it. So Kay, I am so delighted that you joined me today. I told you I poured a glass of wine. I am ready to hear all about this because having been married for, my entire life at this point, I get to live vicariously through Suddenly Sexual.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me on today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So first off, before we get into some of the meat and talking about sex in this day and age is opens up all sorts of possibilities. How'd you get involved in this book?
Well, goodness, it must have been over a decade ago that I was working with Hal Spielman. I was his publicist on his first book, Suddenly Solo, which he wrote about what it was like after his wife had passed away and getting back out there and figuring the dating landscape. What set him apart, however, is that he was one of the leading market researchers in the world. His company was a global company. So when he wanted to figure out what to do, he devised a plan to interview over 1,600 men and women who were age 55 and over, who had lost their partner either through loss, death, or divorce. And he wanted to find out what the process was like for coming back from that. And some of the emotional issues, some of the mistakes that were made, and beginning process of how do you get back out there again when you feel the time is right. So when we first met, I was his publicist on that, and we did a lot of wonderful things. The Today Show came out to his house, and they were there for hours doing a fabulous interview, and New York Times and ARP and multiple TV stations, both in the United States and internationally as well. When a few years had passed, Hal and I had a conversation about what's the next step. So we talked a little bit about, in various age groups, when you either lose somebody through death or a person gets divorced, which I've seen with a lot of my friends, when they get back out there socially, that first sexual experience that you have when you have been so used to being with somebody else has a lot of emotional weight to it.
Well, I can imagine.
So how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And what is the process? So that's when, Hal went back to, the market researcher that he is, and went back and reviewed a lot of the different studies that were done. And we picked around 25 different stories that people shared what that initial relationship was like, what some of the great experiences were, what was some of the not so great experiences, and how they got past, sex changes as you get older. And, he talked to people who were, 50 and over about that and the different problems and obstacles that they had, how they overcame it. And it's a great learning tool. And it's great to hear other people's intimate thoughts, those thoughts that kind of run in our head when we're with somebody that maybe we don't share with other people. Well, the book captures that. And I think that's a wonderful way for people to say, I'm not alone.
Absolutely.
I've had that thought,
I think that's fabulous, especially since there are subjects in here that we're not always that quick to share with our best friend, and this way we feel like, oh, that happened to you too, or something. I think that's you're not alone.
Exactly. And also, I don't want to use the word permission, but sometimes some people felt that, should they be having sex again? Is it too soon? What's the right way to enter a relationship again? And the book almost gives you permission because it says you just have to feel what's right for you. And some people, they want to get into something sooner, and sometimes it's later. One big question we had in the book was, should the first sexual experience be with somebody that you really connect with? Or should it be just sex for sex's sake? And just like you get over the hurdle, and it's like, and the story in this book is she got over the hurdle and she didn't want to see the guy again. But she felt she had gotten past those certain issues that she had, and she felt more confident in herself, and that worked for her. Other people like, well, no, I want it to be a relationship. And it was funny, I remember one time with Hal when we were promoting the first book, Suddenly Solo, up in New York. I think we were at the 92nd Street Y. And a lot of the women there were like, I've been married to one man for decades, and now he's passed, and I want to experience all the things that I didn't get to experience beforehand. You know, they came into a relationship that was the only man they had ever known. And now they're like in their late 60s, 70s, and some of them were even like 80. And they were like, I still look good. I want a man. I want to have sex. And Hal and I were like, okay.
And thus, Suddenly Sexual was born.
Exactly.
You're doing all this promotional work on the dating scene, and you realize, wow, they were asking about the couple of dates that worked out. What's next?
Right. And the book is fearless in the fact that it really tackles many intimate issues that people have when they're having sex, and also what is sex when you get older and there's certain issues. Maybe there's intimacy issues.
Right.
You know, maybe there's issues. I mean, people have been very candid about issues that they've had, you know, having sex after cancer surgery. They've talked about issues that they've had with difficulty having sex after menopause and, you know, after prostate cancer. And all these different issues are really coming up in here, and they bared their souls. I mean, obviously we use a certain amount of anonymity to change some of the places and dates and what have you to protect them, but they shared what was in their heart and what they were worried about and how they let their guard down, because having sex is letting your guard down in the most intimate fashion, and how they could reveal themselves to somebody and still feel comfortable.
Right. So people they just spoke to you. They told you these things and they didn't hold back?
No, they were very open. I mean, some of them said, well, just make sure you cover this up, or don't say they live here, or, you know, what have you.
My name.
No, protect protect some of my anonymity, which was great. But, you know, it was funny. I mean, some of the stories are very funny. Some of them are heartwarming. Some of them are cautionary tales. So it's a little bit of a mix in there, and I think it's important for any person who might be newly single and is contemplating the dating realm that they sit back and they read the book, and they can kind of be a little bit more aware of some of the issues that are out there now.
Right. Well, what I was thrilled to see, Hal's first book, Suddenly Solo, you were discussing, had a male co-author, and this time around he has you. So we get the female perspective here. As the book was coming together, did you two have discussions, disagreements? Oh, we can't put that. Oh, we better put that. Did you get to voice for us women in there?
Yeah, I mean, Hal was very, very open about things. There were a couple of areas that he did not. He was like, "Oh my goodness," because there were certain issues when women were dealing with vaginal issues in menopause.
Right.
And there's a section in there where the woman discusses what her gynecologist guided her to do. And Hal was like, oh my goodness, can we say that? And I'm like, I think it's an important thing to say, because I think it's important for women who are going through that to know that they are not alone, and to understand that if they're having a sexual experience with somebody who's new, they have to account for that. You know, patterns change, behaviors change, new people have a whole different process and a different style, and there's different behaviors, and you have to feel comfortable enough to have those conversations and realize that it's not going to be the same as your prior relationship. There's going to be a lot of new wonderful things you can discover, but if you're concerned about certain things physically, we really push going to the doctor and having that candid conversation, because there's things out there that can help.
Nice. Well, you know, not only is this book with both a male and female perspective, nice. You and Hal also have quite an age difference, which is great for the book.
Yes.
Hal is now 93.
Yep.
93, right? In a Suddenly Sexual book. Loving that. And you are most certainly not 93. So,
no, I'm not.
Which makes the book a lot more universal, which I love. So it's for people who, you know, we're talking about mature adults, but not, you know, not necessarily 93, but we're not in college having sex here.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're talking about people who are 50 and over. So a lot of the stories are for people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and a few in their 80s.
80s,
You know,
90s.
Hal didn't throw any of the 90 angles in there yet. However, he did in the beginning reveal to me when his wife, who was significantly younger than he was, died of breast cancer. And when he finally did decide to embark on his first sexual relationship, he detailed for me the track that was running in his head the
Interesting.
first time he was having sex. And he was very, very vulnerable about it. And I think that that was amazing because he talked about, what am I doing? Will this be right? Will she be happy? Will I satisfy her? And what am I doing here? This woman is not my wife. Who is this person? And like this voice kept running in his head. He was feeling guilty, even though his wife had long passed.
Right.
And he was trying to figure out, like, and then it was all the, will I be good enough? And have I forgotten what I'm supposed to be doing? And will she like this? And what do I say? And so forth. And I think he set the tone for the book in the fact that he was so candid that it made other people feel like, wow, he's willing to reveal all of the hesitancies and the insecurities and the track that runs in our minds so many times. He was willing to reveal that,
Right.
which I think then people felt like, oh, okay, I think I'll share it now too.
And so important, like you said at the beginning about the book, you know, I would not know that that is what a man is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I would have no idea. But getting the chance to read it and say this is what he's thinking, and then also to read what women are thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
feel like, oh, I'm not nuts. You know, we all
No,
think we're not nuts.
right. And I think what's interesting too, because we're talking about men, and obviously we discussed in here low testosterone,
Right.
issues of some men dealing with it in certain
That's
ways.
got to really kill their egos.
Yeah, but it's how men go about it. But it's also really important when we address in the book, it's how women deal with it too. We have certain stories in there where, you know, the man was kind of avoiding the woman and she's thinking it's her and that he's not sexually attracted to her. And finally, he just said, you know, I feel we have a connection and so forth, but this is a problem that I'm having. And she
Wow.
felt so relieved. And she's like, but you know what? Sex isn't always just about intercourse.
Mm.
Why can't we enjoy intimacy? And why can't we do some things that are a little, you know, a little fun, a little this, a little that, that can bring about pleasure? And
Right.
they don't have to put the pressure on you to, oh, do you have an erection? And is it
Nice.
working and
Yeah.
what have you? So it was very open. And I thought, again, it really opens up the door for sex in the wider
Yes.
definition of what it is.
And it also gives then, just like you were explaining, if I'm a woman who is with a new person feeling like, oh, is it me? He's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe he's not into me. Reading it would help me to realize maybe he is into me and maybe there's something else. And I'm just not.
Exactly.
And maybe just having that conversation, which now I'll feel more comfortable having, will open
Mm-hmm.
up possibilities.
Right. And also, too, people realize when they've been in a relationship with one person for a long time, they are set into a certain pattern. You
Right.
know, we personally might be stuck in our ways, but we're also used to how things were with somebody else. So we know, okay, if that person's unhappy, this is how they act. Or if they're happy, this is how they act. And when you're in and you're kind of like set, because that's how it's been for decades, and now you're in a new relationship with somebody, you don't really know what some of their responses are.
Right.
And that's where we talk a lot about, you know, communication when you're in a relationship with somebody new after a long period of time, that it's a little bit of a dance and you're going to have to figure out those things again.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. As you were doing all these interviews and hearing things, I'm sure there were things that you heard that were, wow. Any big shockers? Is there anything that you just, wow, I didn't think this was going to go in that direction at all?
There was one that was kind of funny because this woman shared that she was getting ready for, you know, the first intimate experience that she had had in a long time, and she was the mother and of, you know, she had been through birth several times, and she called in her girlfriend and she was like, "Am I on point down there? You know, am I on trend?" because it's like, should it be waxed? Should it be this? Should it be that? How does
These are
everything look?
questions.
Well, I mean, you look at the business that's happening right now with vaginal rejuvenation, and the plastic surgeons are making a fortune. So it is a concern that women have, or are they on point down there?
That's
And
right.
she called her girlfriend in, and it was like, and her girlfriend was like, maybe you should have just gone to the waxer and asked her whether you're on point or not.
Well, that's true. If I suddenly asked my girlfriend, what are you thinking about this?
Is the 1970s gone, or are they back? Are we back to the Brazilian? So yeah, so it was a funny conversation. But again, it's true that this is something that a woman was thinking about. Will he think that I'm attractive? And that's what it comes down to. Am I attractive enough? Am I pleasing enough? And sometimes they just need that little boost of confidence.
Absolutely. And like you said, times have changed. It's 2020. I'm not even sure I know what's in.
Yeah, right? And now being 2020 with COVID out there, there's a whole new realm of what's in.
Like, do we need to release a book on how to have sex with a mask on? I mean, is this a thing?
Actually, it is a thing. The CDC has launched guidelines and which we actually posted on the Suddenly Solo Facebook page about what the guidelines are for sexual intercourse right now, what the CDC is saying, especially if you're not in a monogamous relationship with somebody that you've been with for quite some time. And, it's kind of funny because Hal and I were laughing because obviously they are talking about masks, and they're talking about, well, maybe you might want to do things with a plexiglass plate between the two.
Okay, I definitely need a sip of wine if I'm going to think about
So yeah, I mean, again, the realms keep changing, and I think it's made dating a lot harder right now.
If it's a CDC guideline, I'm thinking that it has to be outdoors also, because
one never knows. That could be really dangerous.
Everything is outdoors nowadays. Like all of our restaurants and everything is outdoors.
Yeah.
There's that 6 feet apart rule, so I'm not quite sure how this is going to work.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that could get us into a lot of trouble. That might be a news story for the next book. Suddenly Sexual.
Well, that's what I'm worried about.
COVID, right?
But that just goes to show that, if you are 50 or 60 or 70 right now, and the last time you had a new partner was 30, 40, or 50 years ago, everything has changed from the Brazilians to the COVID. I mean, we just have no basis for,
right.
human sex right now.
Right. It is so true. But I think that the one thing that hopefully that the book shows is that, relationships are the core of our life. Yes. And the reason why Hal wrote the first book was that he was lonely. And he wrote the first book actually geared more towards men, right, and helping them because men.
They didn't have.
Well, yeah, but what was interesting though is that while he wrote the book geared more towards men, because men oftentimes will not ask anybody for help. They don't have a social network. Like, us girls, we sit, we talk, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through. Men have a tendency not to do that. And then they start to feel overwhelmed because once they become the single man, a lot of women start coming on to them, and sometimes they don't know how to cope with that. Wow. But what he found, what was interesting is that so many women bought the book Suddenly Solo because they wanted to know what men were thinking.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So then you got involved with this book here, because if we're going to find out what men are thinking, there are men buying this to find out what women are thinking.
Absolutely. So I mean, it goes back and forth, and I think that it deals a variety of issues that are also beyond just the sex part of it. But how do you handle when your adult children start commenting about your relationship? Ooh. And what are some of the signs to be aware of that maybe you're not in a right relationship for you for safety reasons? And we talk about STDs. They're prevalent, and they're prevalent in the older communities because people feel, well, you can't get pregnant, so I don't need to wear a condom. So they're rampant, and people are, just trying to figure out how they handle that situation. And, you know, a lot of the women, they have to, you know, hold to the position, you know,
Yeah.
throw your confidence on happening.
And like you
So,
said, that's not something I talk about with my girlfriends very often.
mhm,
You
mm,
know, so I
right.
did hear that is it the Villages in Florida
Mhm.
is the highest
Yes,
rate of STDs in the country?
that is correct. Yes.
Retirement
Yeah.
community.
Yeah,
Wow,
because
they're
there's a
having
lot going
fun.
on.
There's a lot going on at the
There's a lot going on.
Villages. So we need to drive up there and find out if they're all wearing masks.
Oh my goodness, it is. It's crazy times. It's crazy times.
It
But
is crazy.
hopefully, you know, it circles back to the point that there's a need for relationships.
So
And
much.
I think that we're finding that now more than ever, you know, how much we're missing the physical contact, the
Right.
touch, you
I mean,
know. So I think that people who have been going through this and have been alone, once they come out of this, I think a lot of people are going to be looking for relationships because they might have felt even more isolated being at home and being cooped up by themselves if they didn't have other family members around with them. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to start, you know, doing some reading
right.
and figuring out what their next step is going to be and what to be aware of, you know, as maybe they venture online right now and they start, you know, corresponding with somebody or doing, you know, video chats with somebody while they're getting ready for the next phase.
I think that's a really great point. We're sitting here right now in this really kind of surreal existence.
Mm-hmm.
But as humans, we're wired to be together with other
Yes.
people, whether
Mm-hmm.
in a one-on-one relationship or just, you know, having community. And
Mm-hmm.
all of that has been taken away for, I mean, months now.
Yeah.
And you're right, when the doors open, and they will, this is not going to last
Yes.
forever. I mean, this is
Yes.
absolutely not going to be forever. Might feel
Right.
like that sometimes, but it
Mm-hmm.
won't be. But when this does end, people are going to really want to be in relationship. So
Yeah.
while you're still sitting there quarantined, great reading material. I especially appreciate that you talk about there are some things here having to do with warning signs. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not all relationships are positive ones. And
No.
you do have some situations in here that turned out not so positive. And
Yeah.
it's good to kind of read what are the red flags before I
Mm-hmm.
get involved? What should I
Right.
be looking for?
Absolutely. I think it's critical. I mean, actually, one of the red flags was it was a person that Hal knew very well, his personal story that happened there. So yeah, it can be scary getting out there, but I think if people are smart and they pay attention, and again, as you said, they look for what some of the warning signs are and they get input, you know, from their friends and family members and so forth. I mean, we do talk about sometimes there are issues with family members if they feel that, oh, is my inheritance in jeopardy? And
Oh,
that might be
yes.
one thing.
That's a
Or yeah, or you know, really close friends who say if they think they see something off with the person, that's a totally different situation. So
right, right. You know, that's very true. But sometimes, you know, if the person is on the up and up,
hmm
your adult children are just not going to be happy. That does happen.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the story here, the gentleman was involved with the woman, and she did happen to be a bit younger, and he was kind of helping her out a bit financially,
Mm,
and the family members were not happy about it, and he had to kind of sit with them and said, I'm not going into dementia. I know exactly what I'm doing, and your inheritances are protected through this, and this, but I earned the money. And I can spend it how I want to spend it. And you need to be able to treat me and, you know, my future wife with respect.
right.
And he really, you know, he just said, this is important to me. And I think then they kind of like heard what he had to say.
Well, it's funny we're talking about adult children. You know, I'm sitting here encouraging people go out and buy this book now, so that when we come out of quarantine and you're starting to formulate relationships, you're all ready. If you have older parents, perhaps you want to read the book
Mhm.
because you don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. If your parents are, you know, this might be a little bit eye-opening, and it might also help you to see where they're at in certain things. You know, I think sometimes we
I
don't
think it's
understand.
important. Yeah. And I think it's important too, because, you know, um, sometimes daughters might have to have a conversation, or sons might have a conversation with their dad, and they're not being nosy, but they're being loving and caring, and they do want to make sure that that person is protected, and that they are protecting themselves from STDs, and that they're, financially protected. And so not to take it as that they're being nosy or trying to infiltrate their life, but to understand that relationships can be extremely positive, but they can also come with a certain amount of risks.
Okay, that's going really full circle. If you sit down to talk to your mom about STDs,
Yep.
It's like, wow, we've really gotten to a point that I've got to sit down and talk to my mom about STDs.
Yeah. It's like, Mom, remember when we had the talk? Guess what? We're going to have it again. Yeah.
So whether you yourself are one of those over 50s who's looking for a relationship, or maybe your parents might be, and you want to be able to have open and honest dialogue, if you want to be able to see things for what they are, to know what people are going through and thinking about, because you might not want to ask Dad, so what do you think about her? You might want to go with the market research. So this is the product of loads and loads of interviews. It's not just, your experiences or Hal's experiences.
Right. Oh, no. There's 25 different stories in there, and there are various age ranges and various demographics that are in there. So you get a lot of different perspectives, which I think is important for people, because you never know. And sometimes you might see yourself in several different types of stories.
Good point. And that you can see yourself, and whether you're learning or whether you're feeling validated, or feeling like you have permission, or maybe you're reading it and you're taking the story as a warning because of the way something went. It's like the best friends that you wish you had sitting here talking about things, because
exactly,
many of us have friends, but we don't have these conversations.
Right. That's so true. That's so true. A lot of people don't, and that becomes part of the problem, because in a relationship you need to be able to really be vulnerable and have a conversation. And I think it's more important than ever. I mean, in your 20s, you might be able to get away with a certain amount of not conversing and just taking it for what it is. But as you get older, there's more issues that need to be discussed.
Right. Now, having worked on this book, has it made you more open with your friends or parents, or after reading it, you just want to hand them a copy and just kind of call it a day?
Well, my parents are deceased, but I gave it to my aunt, who's in her 70s, and she was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you wrote that."
I love that.
And I was teasing her because I was like, "You were around in the 70s, you know about all this stuff." She goes, "Yes, we didn't write it."
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious that she had that reaction.
But she's laughing. She said it was funny, but she said it made me look at different things, that right now she's not in a relationship, but to be aware that people might have different feelings about relationships. And some people, and I think that's about respect. Some people don't want to be with someone who might have passed on, and they feel that they don't want to date, and they feel that they're perpetually married to that person. That's fine. Some people might be, when someone passes, that they want to get out and they want to start dating immediately. And you have to just realize, and some people want to wait for a few months. Everybody is going to have a different reaction to things. And I think that's where we need to be respectful and understanding. But the most important thing, I think, is for people to understand what's going on with themselves emotionally, so they understand what relationship they're in, why they're getting into it, and is it beneficial for them?
Fabulous. And Kay, I have a feeling if your aunt starts dating someone, she's going to call you up for advice now.
She might.
She'll say, I know, my niece knows all about that. Let me call her. So it makes a terrific gift, and it might open up some conversations that you never thought you were going to have with people.
Oh, it certainly will do that.
Absolutely. It is a great conversation starter. Absolutely. And some great tips. Any final words for our viewers?
I think the key thing really is to, as I was saying earlier, to understand yourself, to understand that we are all on a journey, and that there's different phases in our life. But even though it seems like, especially if you're later in life, that a door has closed and what you thought you had built and you might have been in a relationship that might have been wonderful, or maybe it wasn't that wonderful, or whatever it was, and you think that that's where my life was and now it's over, and you're wondering about how to move forward, you're not alone.
Right.
There are millions of people that are out there that are struggling with that idea of moving forward and having a next phase in their life. And I think that's what the book really brings about, that there are many different ways to cope with that. And to realize that, if you need guidance and help, it is out there. So if you need to talk to your doctor about any physical things that are going on, do it. If you need to talk with a psychologist or a mental health counselor about anything that you might be dealing with, do it. Or if you just want to get together with some of your friends to talk about some of the different things that are going on, because there are new phases and they can be really exciting. I mean, a lot of the book, we have some different stories in there that are cautionary. We also have some great stories of people who have been together. And you look at Hal, he found somebody and he's been in a happy relationship now for years with a wonderful woman, because he decided that my life isn't over, even though it might feel like it's over. There are other opportunities for happiness and for intimacy and for fun and for a relationship. So that, I think, is what I really take away from knowing Hal, is that there's always another possibility for joy to come into your life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That the great words to leave with is that it's not over.
Mm-hmm.
And there's plenty of life left to be lived. And yes, the day will come that we can take off the masks and live it.
Yes, so true, so true.
and not to be afraid. And don't we all, especially after death or divorce, we all have on some sort of a mask.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
We're all kind of putting ourselves into quarantine, but just like is happening with the whole world now, it's time to go out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And
very much so.
It's a great blueprint so that you can feel as if you have a person, a group of friends right there cheering you on and giving you, that little push that many times we need to get right out the door. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
thank you, Stephanie, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, so much my pleasure. And for all of you, Suddenly Sexual by Hal Spielman and Kay Renz is available on Amazon and at booksellers near you. Grab a copy so when the quarantine's over, you too can go out there and find your person. Thanks for joining us.